Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, take a look at adaptations of games. We had Tomb Raider animated series. This came out literally just last week. They launched one season. It was 8 episodes. This is going to be spoiler free. I won't have any detailed breakdowns of each episode, but just kind of broader points, a little bit of story focus, what they did well, what they didn't, and my final review and score at the end. So this is not a promotion. This is just an honest review. I know a lot of us too really think we can't trust the reviews that are out there with some, and yeah, this is just my honesty of the show as a Tomb Raider fan. So let's get into it. So the series takes place after Tomb Raider or Shadow of the Tomb Raider game. And the series primarily focuses on the human and emotional and like mental fatigue of Lara Croft. She's still younger. She's still someone that's kind of getting into her stride, like we see her in Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3, like back in the 90s. We also see through events that actually haunt her. She has some flashbacks. And then we also see how she's interacted in the past and currently with her relationships, whether it's work buddies, old friends, that kind of thing. Beginning is very slow. It's almost as if we're all around how she's feeling and not really a lot of engagement. It isn't until episode probably toward the end of 2 and in 3 where we actually get some action, and the action actually ramps up mostly through the rest of the episodes. Especially 7 and 8, there's actually quite a bit of action there. Well, probably 6 too. But yeah, 6, 7, and 8 are actually pretty ramped up, and then 8 is crazy. That's a bit of a mess. There's so much going on, and things move so fast. Also, we still get to see that Lara is kind of discovering herself. We have some development, of course, through the Survivor series, which is Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And this is just kind of picking up where that's left off. So she has less experience. She makes some mistakes. You can see this in her movement and her combat. You can also see this too in her decision making and how she's interacting with other people. And then you can also see this too in her gear, as she doesn't have her pistols yet. The showrunner of the show wanted to show Lara still developing and growing into who we know her to be from Shadows of the Tomb Raider to Tomb Raider 1. So this is supposed to help kind of like fill that gap. And unfortunately, yeah, she doesn't get her firearms until like episode 7, episode 8. And really it's in 8 where she uses them quite a bit. Or at least a lot more than the rest of the show. The character of Lara is pretty well preserved as we know her for the most part from what we would expect. There are other characters that we know from previous games. One of them has been changed quite drastically while the others are just left alone. And I feel like this is to kind of fill a DEI inclusion or maybe like expand on that a little more for people. And that's kind of a bummer. Like, the lore's already established. We already know who these characters are from playing the games. And to alter some of that is frustrating. Lara does seem also too muscular. She is really ripped. Now, she does some moves, of course, in the games and even in the TV show and the movies where we would expect her to be pretty fit. But again, like, unless she is a kind of bodybuilder as a woman, I feel like she wouldn't necessarily get that ripped. There's also, she still does have her feminine features, which is nice, but they definitely seem toned down some on purpose, especially like chest and butt and some other things that we would expect. So like, unless she suddenly got jobs done when she gets into Tomb Raider 1 and so on, they're just purposefully changing that. But like too, if you're also working out a ton, okay, your feminine features will generally shrink as your muscles expand, and that's just changing with some of the hormonal levels in the body. The flow of the series is still very fast. It's just really fast all the time, with some scenes lasting less than like 2 or 3 minutes. And so you really have to pay attention. You really have to be keeping up with what's going on. Every episode is about 25 minutes. And just the lack of time to be able to develop characters and scenes and even the story and plot this just forces the really fast pace. Sometimes, too, there isn't really time to process what's going on or to put things together. Again, to really kind of develop the episodes. It just feels like there's too much in there, and it's actually quite frustrating. The myth itself of what they go through in the whole TV show is great. It's actually quite enjoyable, too, to explore with Lara Croft as she's going through the series. They're using real aspects and ancient artifacts. They're using real places. They're using real historical figures. Of course, they're taking some liberties there for the show and also just to speed up the pace in which they have for roughly 25 minutes per episode. But it is cool that they're actually doing that. They're actually basing this off of something. The show was rated for 14 years of age. And honestly, I don't like this for two reasons. One scene in particular seems quite violent for 14-year-olds, while they probably have seen this before, or like there is the availability of TikTok and YouTube and all of that other stuff out there. Still, to think of like if my kids, my two sons were watching that at 14 years old, it's like, wow, that's kind of really violent. And it's not just the blood and stuff, but it's literally looking at the face and using the face to animate the feelings and emotions that the characters are feeling at that time. And like that one particular scene actually hits pretty hard. And I just think that's a little too much for people that still aren't quite developed or even adults yet. They're still minors. And it's a pretty tough scene. The rest of the violence in the show generally fits. Again, she doesn't have her firearms toward the end. There's a lot of like missed hits and punches and like a lot of missed blade movement. So, I mean, too, it's also to keep it interesting, but like the rest of the violence seems to fit with the show. There's also a non-sexual scene that's several minutes during one of the episodes where Laura's actually nude. And while she's covered and while they don't show any assets, she's taking a bath, and she's provided plenty is there for the imagination. And again, I don't feel like this is appropriate for 14-year-olds. Because this is basically like softcore type of stuff. And most of you probably know what I'm talking about, of course, with the corn and everything. But yeah, there's really not too much left up to the imagination. We already know what she looks like and why this is in here, especially as a scene that is not sexualized or there's not even any flirting going on. It really just doesn't make a lot of sense. And the scene, too, is actually quite long. For the episode. So teenagers already struggle enough developing healthy views of the body and the opposite sex, and then the camera angles that we had, they weren't necessary. Okay, she still could have had her bath. She still, with the door cracked open or something, or she could have had more privacy in that time. Of course, as a guy, maybe it's different for women, but it's like Lara Croft as an action hero is not generally designed for the general feminine audience. Not that, women can't not enjoy Tomb Raider, but like generally there's made for the boys. That's why with Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and Chronicles, and Dark Angel, like she has massive assets on her chest, right? and that's not necessarily for the women. That is definitely for the male audience. But again, yeah, this scene just really didn't feel like it needed to be in there, especially with how long it was. So I wished overall for the setting they would pick. It's like, okay, kind of make this for tweens and teens or make the show actually for adults. Because I feel like with this rating of 14, they're trying to walk the line without tipping over on one edge too far, keeping it entertaining and kind of gory and bloody for the adults, and then also keeping it downplayed and keeping the pace pretty fast for the kids and for the teenagers and stuff. The cartoon animation is also very good, except for a few scenes, like wrong angles of movement or static foreground with the background moving from behind. It's actually pretty easy to see that. A few scenes also had computer animation with Laura or other drawn things in, and it just looked kind of off. Because it really doesn't. It's very jarring. I mean, they drawn animations are probably 14, 15 frames per second, and then the computer animation is probably around 25 or 30 frames per second, and just that difference there is very jarring to watch and kind of frustrating. Overall, the rest of it's great. The writing is okay. It's fairly good in some spots, but generally it's pretty flat. But again, the pacing forces things to be short, to be more direct. And while the showrunners wanted to focus with kind of like sledgehammering some scenes home and forcing some character development, it's just very, very quick and just seems artificial for a lot of it, actually. It doesn't come off very well because there isn't enough time to develop things appropriately. The issue 2, Laura Croft's accent sometimes kind of slips out and turns into a different accent, especially in episode 1 and 2, but that did get better through the episodes. There's also continuity issues. There's things that seem unbelievable too due to pacing. Again, it's just like trying to further that story as quick as possible. It's too fast, it's too abrupt, and like episode 8 is an absolute trip to try to just keep up with what's going on. There's a lot of fan service overall for the whole show. The banter between characters, certain moves, tools, weapons, booby traps, enemies, the fight scenes. Like, they really call to a lot of stuff that we've seen and would relate with Tomb Raider, and that's actually really cool that they do that. My overall rating is a 5.5 out of 10. It's just mid, right? It's not horrible, and it's not great. It's somewhere in the middle. While there's a lot of fan service, the pacing and forcing scenes a certain way hinder the immersion and the experience of the whole show. That's just it as a broad sentence. If a big Tomb Raider fan wants to watch the show, watch it once. You can get it on Netflix for $7 a month with ads. Ads don't really hinder you that much. And personally, that's what I did, and then I just canceled after. Otherwise, you could probably miss the show. If you like Tomb Raider, you could probably do without, of course. You're not missing much development with Laura, and you're not missing much either with the development of the supporting characters. And it's because we already have the development of Laura through the Survival trilogy, and then we also have her picking up later where she's like tomb raiding all the time as a professional in Tomb Raider 1 through 6. And so we already have a ton of establishment. We also have the comics as well. And so, again, to kind of just bridge what happened is an interesting theory. But again, it would have been nice if they would have had more time. I don't know if, honestly, they'll get a second season. If they do, I'll be reviewing that as well. You can watch it right here. And I also wish to review adaptations. They're getting more popular. Studios are doing more of them. And there's also a lot of them that are pretty bad. Like Twisted Metal, in my opinion, it's really got nothing to do with the tournament, and also with like Halo, totally destroying Master Chief's character, which is so frustrating. And then we're also getting like Five Nights at Freddy's and others. So whenever I can, I will do these adaptations for you guys. And if you're not interested, hey, just don't click. Just wait for the next thing. It's totally okay. I won't be offended. Honestly, if there is a second season, I want to see more action in season 2. I want to see more action star going on. Honestly, too, I think the shows need to be at least 35 minutes. 25 minutes, man, it's just way too fast. But if we get more, if season 2 is more like season 1, I won't be watching 3. Okay, we don't need to completely reestablish Lara Croft. Again, we already have all of the lore and events and stuff taking place to establish her character, including 3 movies already. And so it's like, if they want to change who she is, I'm not into that. We already have Lara Croft, just like they changed Master Chief, just like they've been changing Star Wars or Marvel or DC for certain stuff. It's like, we already have the lore and the characters. Just leave it like it is. If you want to expand on exactly details of what happened somewhere or the development of her life like season 1, that's fine. But we don't need to completely reestablish Lara Croft. I do feel like, too, just at the end here, that something big is coming down the pipe. We've had the remaster collection, so that was January of this year with remaster 1, 2, and 3. February of next year, 25, we're going to be having 4, 5, and 6 remasters by the same studio, Aspire. And number 1 through 3 is great. If you honestly, and that's actually what you're seeing here on the screen, it's wonderful. We've also had this TV show, and we've heard that there's possibly another live-action movie in the remix, but it's delayed right now. And 2, maybe there's actually a game coming down the pipe. We also had a ton of sales last week for all of the Tomb Raider games on the Xbox Store, and imagine also for Steam and for PlayStation. Literally all of them. They were like 80% off, 70, 80% off. It was honestly quite a bit. So we'll see what happens. Of course, thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always find me over at Gaming Garbage 22. You can also find me over at Discord, Twitter X, and also on Twitch if you want it there first. All of my stuff is there first. Just unedited. It is what it is. And hopefully you guys are doing well. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one. We're continuing on with Tomb Raider 3. We're continuing on with Shadow of the Erd Tree with my buddy. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next one.